Today, we're going to tackle one of the biggest challenges in tech, maybe the biggest. How do we actually control the powerful AI systems that we're all building? You know, as they make more and more decisions for us, making sure they're safe, fair, and compliant, well, that isn't just a nice to have anymore. It's becoming a legal must. So, how in the world do you build a framework of trust for something that thinks faster than any human ever could? Let's dive in. And this is where the stakes get incredibly real. This quote isn't some sci-fi plot. This is the kind of faceless, unaccountable AI decision that's already happening probably millions of times a day. And often, there's no human in the loop, zero transparency, and no way to appeal. It's a problem that affects real people in really profound ways. For businesses, this is way more than just an ethical headache. It's a massive financial risk. So what's this number all about? 7%. That is the maximum fine a company can face under the new EU AI Act. And get this, that's 7% of a company's global revenue. A number like that, yeah, it tends to get everyone's attention. It turns AI governance from a tech problem into a C-suite level crisis, like overnight. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with AI's unchecked power, then introduce this really cool concept, a constitution for AI. From there, we'll break down its architecture of trust, see how you can govern an entire AI pipeline, and then look at automating compliance. Finally, we'll wrap up by asking what this all means for the future of governance itself. So, how do we even begin to solve a problem this huge? Well, the material we're digging into today proposes a pretty elegant solution, a protocol for AI safety that literally acts like a constitution for artificial intelligence. Now, here's an analogy that makes this click instantly. Think back to the early days of the web. E-commerce just couldn't take off until we had HTTPS to create a secure, trusted layer for all those transactions. Well, this framework, ACGS, is trying to do for AI what HTTPS did for the web. It's about creating that fundamental layer of trust so that AI can finally scale in really high-stakes environments. So what is it formally? ACGS Lite is a constitutional governance infrastructure for AI agents. But here's the key takeaway. It's the missing safety layer. It sits right between the raw, untamed power of a large language model and the real world, making absolutely sure that power is used according to your rules. And look, this isn't some far-off theoretical thing. For any developer watching, a single line of code gets you started. This is not some massive, complex integration. It's actually designed to be put to work right away, and it even comes with pre-built templates to get you up and running immediately. All right, let's pull back the curtain and get into the architecture. How does this thing actually build verifiable safety? How does it create trust and, enforce the rules we set for our AI? At its heart is something called the Mackey architecture, which is just a brilliant way to create a separation of powers. First, you have the proposer. That's your AI agent, and it suggests an action. Then, the validator, that's the ACGS engine, checks that proposal against the Constitution. Only if it's approved does the executor actually carry out the action. And all the while, the observer is recording every single thing. And this brings us to the single most important rule in this entire architecture. The AI agent, the proposer, can never be its own validator. This is the whole ballgame. The AI is never, ever allowed to grade its own homework. Because without that strict separation, the whole system of checks and balances just falls apart, and the AI is right back in unchecked control. So this whole system really stands on three pillars. First, there's definition. You define all your governance rules as code using these simple YAML files, which are just a human-readable way to write configurations. Second is enforcement, which is handled by that Massey framework we just talked about. And third is verification, a completely tamper-proof audit trail, all secured with SHA-256 hashing, that proves every single check was performed as it should have been. So how is that trust actually built, technically speaking? Well, the rules are immutable, meaning they can't be changed on the fly. The logs are cryptographically secured with SHA-256 hashing, which creates a chain-verified record. And for speed, it uses a super efficient matching engine. The main thing to know is that this makes the safety checks incredibly fast and reliable, so it's not going to slow your whole application down. Okay, so that's the theory, but how does this actually fit into a real-world development workflow? Let's take a look at how you can integrate ACGNS right into your AI pipeline. This right here shows just how seamless it can be. By adding a simple governance job to your GitLab CI file, you can totally automate these constitutional checks on every single code change. This literally bakes safety directly into your DevOps process, catching any violations long before they ever get close to production.
And governance isn't just for the AI's output, it's also for the rules themselves. This framework gives you a really structured workflow for any policy changes. You register a new policy, you get the right approvals, it has to pass automated gates, like checking for code errors, a process called linting, and running tests. Then you do a small-scale rollout before finally activating it for everyone.
Now for the part that every chief compliance officer has probably dreamed of. Let's see how this system takes all that governance as code and translates it directly into automated compliance and real risk reduction.
And this is the absolute game changer. All that complex governance we've been talking about, it can be boiled down into a detailed compliance report with just one command. Right here, we're asking for a report on the EU AI Act for a system operating in the healthcare domain. Simple as that.
And boom, here's what you get back: an instant assessment report. It gives you a compliance score and shows you exactly which parts of the regulation are covered by your automated controls. Things like risk management, record keeping, transparency, and human oversight. It's a real-time, actionable snapshot of your compliance posture. And it's not just for one regulation either. Check this out. The tool provides automated coverage checks for a whole suite of critical frameworks. We're talking global standards like ISO, all the way to specific US regulations like HIPAA for healthcare. For any company operating in multiple regions, this is just incredibly powerful. And crucially, this isn't just about getting a pat on the back for what you've done. The tool actively helps you find your blind spots. It flags the exact compliance items that still need manual attention, which turns a huge, vague problem into a focused, manageable to-do list for your team. So this technology is clearly powerful, which, of course, leads us to a much bigger, much deeper question about the future of AI governance. Who should actually be in charge of building the constraints for these incredibly capable systems? And this leads us to a truly mind-bending fact from the source material. This whole sophisticated governance engine, with thousands of tests, high-performance architecture, the works, it was built by a founder with no traditional coding background, entirely by collaborating with an AI. Just let that sink in for a second. The tool designed to govern AI was itself built with AI, which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. If an AI is capable enough to help build the very system that's meant to constrain it, then that same AI is clearly powerful enough to cause immense harm if it's left unchecked. And that forces us to ask the fundamental question: who should be writing these constitutions? Who gets to decide the rules for our new machine intelligence?